We'll win together. And you're a part of that together. Don't do this. We need you.
Hey guys, Kiwi here. In this video, I'll be breaking down and reviewing the mid-season finale for The Walking Dead Season 7. This episode, Heart Still Beating, is completely packed with content that actually jumps from location to location, unlike the rest of Season 7A. That being said, spoilers for everything in the show up to Season 7 Episode 8, and I cannot wait to analyze it all, so let's start with the opening scenes. The first thing we see is Maggie grieving over Glenn once more at his grave, then climbing on top the hilltop fence. Gregory awkwardly approaches her, telling her not to get full of herself because of how she saved the hilltop back in 705 Go-Getters. First off, I'd like to mention the fact that Gregory actually calls Maggie and Sasha by their real names. Good job finally learning your lesson, Gregory. I suppose that smack finally got through to you. Second off, Maggie tells him not to let everything bother him, regarding people developing a liking for her and Sasha at Hilltop. Maggie continues to set up her role as leader as she taunts him while once again seeing right through him for the coward he is. Somebody also up on the wall reminds Gregory that Maggie's pregnant, implying that he should stop giving her a hard time. He throws her the apple that he's been shining on his jacket the entire conversation, as a sign that he doesn't want to be a complete dick. Sasha later joins Maggie and Enid in their trailer, bringing an apple pie that was made for them in thanks for what they did to help the community. A little girl apparently even went so far as to say that Maggie should run for president of the Hilltop. At this point, they are practically screaming in our faces that Maggie will continue to become a heavier influence in the Hilltop, eventually running the show on her own just like her comic book counterpart. I'm glad that they are occasionally throwing in hints towards this as Maggie continues to prove her worthy of such authority. Anyways, as Maggie hilariously digs into the pie, she casually asks Sasha about Jesus, wanting to give him a small list of supplies to possibly retrieve for her in the hilltop. Now Sasha lies to Maggie about their true intentions that we found out in 705, but Enid actually catches her on her fib and brings it up after Maggie leaves. Sasha spills the beans and admits to keeping Maggie in the dark, also implying that she is beginning to plot against Negan with Jesus. Now Enid and Sasha both having completely different perspectives of the situation makes for an excellent conflict as they debate their actions moving forward. Considering Enid is still keeping Carl sneaking into the sanctuary a secret at this point, at least she thinks so, she doesn't want to rat Sasha out because she wants to unite them and help Sasha not feel alone. Sasha, of course, not seeing anyone else besides Maggie, Enid, and Hilltop since the events of 701, feels completely trapped in a little bubble. She has no idea what else could possibly be going on, and therefore wants to take action herself in case she's the only one with that mindset. Everyone in this show feels like they have to secretly plot against the Saviors because they feel like they're the only ones who will. Whether it's people from Hilltop like Sasha or Jesus or Maggie, people from Alexandria like Rosita, Eugene, or Michonne, or Enid or Carl, or even people from the Kingdom like Richard and possibly Ezekiel, they all have what it takes to come together and get something productive done. If only they all knew everyone's intentions like we did as the audience. Now eventually they've all come together and hopefully alliances will form, but it has taken them the entirety of this half season for them to come back together. This is shown more by the end of the episode, but essentially the show has everyone broken up for Season 7A. The characters are either each trying to deal with Negan or trying to think of how they can possibly rebel, which also ties into whether or not everyone agrees with Rick's method in all of this. The first shot we see of Negan this episode is him shaving his beard in the same mirror Rick did in his house way back in episode 512, after first getting to Alexandria. Now I wanted to mention this in one of my other prediction videos, but I didn't really know where to stick it in. Bottom line, I was really hoping for a shaving scene where Negan would parallel Rick's shaving scene, and that's pretty much exactly what we got. And now just as a side note, although losing the beard does make JDM look incredibly accurate to comic book Negan, I was actually getting used to his facial hair. Looking at him felt a bit odd during the first watch of this episode, but after multiple viewings, along with going back and reading the comic book counterpart of Negan during this arc, the new look has definitely grown on me. It's conveniently hilarious in my opinion that Negan shaves his chin just in time to have Spencer's blood accurately splattered across it, just like in the comics. I enjoy both shaved and unshaved Negan, but I wish they would have just stuck with one or the other from the beginning. So Carl sits there in the bathroom with Judith and looks completely disgusted as he's being given pointers on how to shave by someone like Negan instead of Rick. Once again, Negan is impersonating him and corrupting the safe feeling of Carl's house. Whether in the bathroom or in the kitchen or on the patio, he wants Carl to feel unsafe even in his own home, being constantly reminded of him in the future. This is also why they took their mattresses back in 704, even why they didn't need them, just as another subtle reminder of Negan when all they want to do at the end of the day is lay their head down. Outside, Tara brings Olivia the powdered lemonade and tries to make her feel better. She gives Olivia the chance to go home, seeing how difficult it is for her to be around Negan in general. Olivia says that it's okay, as she wants to keep her promise to Rick that she would watch over Judith. Now, I doubt that Tara taking Olivia's place would have changed the outcome of the episode later on, but it is worth pointing out that Olivia decides to stand up for herself and make the strong decision on sticking through it. She joins Carl, Negan, and Judith inside as Carl sets the table, getting an extra spot for Rick, I believe, but it actually eventually becomes Lucille's spot once Negan decides that they aren't waiting for Rick anymore. Olivia pours lemonade for Negan and he seems pleased, and just completely entertained by the situation in general. Back at the entrance, Eugene awkwardly walks into Alexandria while the Saviors close the gate for him. He walks past Spencer along with two Saviors taking all the supplies he just found in 707. Spencer gets overall a happy thank you from the Saviors, especially considering how horrible they normally are. The first guy tells him that he appreciates the fact that Spencer understands his role in all this, and that Negan appreciates it as well. The second Savior actually starts kind of flirting with Spencer, as she implies that if he plays his cards right, he could get taken back to their home base with her. It's funny how she mentions that she'll buy Spencer a sandwich, as the Sanctuary uses their point system for supplies. I imagined her and Spencer at that booth that Dwight was making that sandwich at back in 703. Anyways, I can imagine that the Saviors being so nice to Spencer started to put the idea in everyone's head that Spencer could possibly become a Savior. Now this is obviously all just hypothetical, but maybe he'd just start out as a grunt like the two he was talking to, but eventually rose through the ranks and became one of Negan's right-hand men like Simon. It would have been a very interesting concept to see Spencer play from the other side, showing a true revolt in the dictatorship. The woman flirting with Spencer calls out Eugene for rudely staring at them during their conversation, and we get a hilarious callback to when he was actually watching Abraham and Rosita way back in Season 4B. She tells him to get the hell out of there, which he does.
You like watching Haircut?
Yes. I mean...
You mean to get the hell out of here. Now!
But moving on to Daryl, who's holding the note that he was given last episode while he sits in his cell contemplating what he should do. Last week I made a video theorizing on what I thought would happen to Daryl along with Jesus as I gave my opinions on the matter. I feel like Daryl was considering all the factors of his current situation, regarding whether or not it was another test by Negan and the Saviors, or if it isn't, who's helping him. And then there's the question if he's trying to escape for real this time, is it worth the possible consequence of being caught? And remember, Daryl knows that Negan is gone from the Sanctuary right now, bringing Carl back to Alexandria. He also knows that Jesus is somewhere around the factory, as he saw him jump off of Negan's truck last episode while he was leaving. There was much debate as to whether it was Jesus, Sherry, or Dwight helping out Daryl here, and I honestly loved the discussion on all three sides along with all the evidence and speculation given. Now originally I speculated that it was just Jesus that helped him out, but a lot of people pointed out, why didn't he just open the door for Daryl? And also the footsteps sounded like someone that was supposed to be there. So it does make a lot of sense that it would be Dwight, considering if you guys remember back in 704 I believe, Dwight actually took Daryl's motorcycle, and in this episode Daryl gets it back. He got the key, and yes, it is the same motorcycle, it matches up. So if Jesus wasn't the one that freed Daryl, what was he doing there exactly? Is it possible that Jesus was trying to find Daryl, but at the same time, as a coincidence, Dwight just happened to set him free? Either way, we see Jesus pick up that little walkie-talkie that we see in the preview for Season 7B. And what this is actually a long-range radio so they can listen into the Saviors in the future. So anyways, Daryl makes his way out to the motorcycles again, but actually gets caught by Fat Joey. Joey's reaction shows that this is obviously not a test, as he begs for his life. Daryl isn't taking shit anymore as he beats in Joey's head Lucille style with the metal bar that he found while sneaking out. It is so freaking insane watching Daryl bash in Joey's head. Daryl honestly has been internalizing everything, and that in this moment, he has just completely snapped in a way that he was almost not in control of himself anymore. Daryl has literally been stripped of everything in his life at this point, and he's not ready to deal with anything else. One thing I don't understand is why Fat Joey didn't pull Rick's revolver on him, and now it does make sense that maybe he didn't because there were no bullets in it, but you know, you can still pull a gun on someone even though there aren't any bullets in it. That person doesn't know that you don't have bullets, right? And actually, in the introduction episode for Jesus last season, I recall him asking Rick and Daryl if they actually had bullets, assuming that they didn't.
Do we even have any ammo?
To which Daryl and Rick proved him wrong, so it would be funny to have Daryl turn this around on Fat Joey while Jesus listened to it. Now, something else that I wanted to quickly point out that is just completely irrelevant. What happened to Fat Joey's blood on Daryl? So after Daryl kills Joey, you can see Joey's blood all over him, particularly on his arm. But then when the camera changes to the pistol and goes back to Daryl, you see that the blood on him is just completely gone. What the heck happened there? I think that's honestly just a little mistake that they made behind the scenes. I was straight up just taking screenshots of the episode as I was rewatching it, and I noticed that and thought it was pretty funny, so I thought I'd point it out. And you know, I actually didn't mind Joey compared to most of the saviors that we've been introduced to, but regardless, that scene was honestly just really intense, and Joey's reaction just made it that much more brutal. Jesus sees all of this, and him and Daryl actually end up escaping together and head towards the hilltop. Daryl is right though, it really is just about getting it all or nothing when it comes down to the sanctuary, and Daryl realizes that now. Even though he's broken free, has being a prisoner changed him for the worse? I suppose we'll have to wait until Season 7B to know for sure what kind of ways it will affect him. Moving on to Michonne though, who is shown still holding that random savior at gunpoint in her Jeep while she drives her to the sanctuary. Apparently her name's Isabella, but I'm not too sure as I don't believe her name's actually ever spoken out loud. Michonne starts questioning her, but gets no answers, so she eventually starts explaining her own view of the situation.
I'm not gonna kill him today. I'm gonna find a way that we win. I'm gonna change how this ends for me. That's why I'm out here alone.
We find out that she realizes that we won't kill Negan anytime soon, and that she just wants to start forming some sort of plan for a better tomorrow. Michonne wants to ensure that she has a proper life to live in the future, and not a life where she is constantly terrorized by a madman, along with all the people around her. So originally, we were predicting that Michonne would be driven right up to the entrance of the sanctuary gates, but that is not the case. The Savior brings Michonne to the top of a hill, overlooking an intersection. During my first viewing, the intersection looked like any other post-apocalyptic intersection with deserted cars scattered about, along with honestly what seemed like a horde of walkers. I was so confused here, as the Savior starts telling Michonne that they are all Negan. So after rewatching, along with looking up in the comments of social media and such and seeing what fans had to say, I heard a general consensus that most people were just completely confused by this scene in one way or another. But here's the actual rundown. The first thought is that they aren't walkers, and that they are in fact saviors. They could have possibly been backup for Negan, but a more popular theory is that it's actually an outpost, or a group that would maybe work at an outpost. It is entirely possible that the savior Michonne kidnapped was simply from an outpost, and doesn't even live at the sanctuary or really associate with it in general. If you think there's anything I'm missing, feel free to throw it in the comments. Either way, the Savior knows that she's probably going to be killed, and even suggests it, as she gives Michonne advice on how to get away with it all. She tells her that a silencer is in the glove box, along with suggesting that she should roll the truck down a hill and go home. It would have been nice to hear the Savior's story, or at least some sort of opinion from her, but the fact that we don't makes it so much more brutal, once again. Whoever this Savior is, whatever her story is, Let's assume that she possibly started out like someone from Michonne's group, like from Rick's group. Who knows how long she's been with Negan, but just like most people, she used to be free. I don't mean to make some sort of sob story about her, but through the process of becoming a savior and serving under Negan, she's seen enough and probably experienced enough to the point that she's just willing to give up on life, even sympathizing with Michonne. To end off this scene, we see Michonne shooting her in the vehicle from a distance, which some fans were confused about, but you do hear the noise of a silencer, and she turns around and drives off. I assume that she did what the woman told her to do, rolling the truck down a hill, or getting rid of it somehow, and she goes back to Alexandria. We don't actually see her getting there, we just know that she gets back there later on. And if you guys have been curious, regarding Aaron and Rick, I'm currently creating a completely separate video regarding them and the significance of their scenes together in this episode, so I'm just going to completely skip over them for now. The same can be said about Richard and Morgan greeting Carol at her house, as I've actually already recently devoted a full video over 10 minutes long towards it. That being said, if you'd like a more in-depth breakdown and review of them, feel free to check them out, as I actually love their characters along with the kingdom in general. This review for 708 is already decently lengthy, and although I'm completely okay with that, sometimes I like to break up certain topics and include them in their own videos. This way I have a bit more breathing space regarding these specific topics, and I can focus on them more properly. With that all cleared up, let's get back to Alexandria and discuss all the scenes leading up to the climax of the episode. Along with afterwards, of course. So Father Gabriel speaks with Rosita in the church, as she isn't trying to hide the bullet from him. He asks her about it, but gets a very simple and straightforward answer.
It's for him.
How will you do it?
I'll pull the trigger.
Gabriel agrees as much as anyone that Negan needs to be taken out of place, but he knows that Rosita's irrational plan isn't the correct method. Christian Serratos, the actor who plays Rosita, does an amazing job at filling this scene with emotion. I love how Rosita and Gabriel have such a down-to-earth conversation, as we get two characters who truthfully speak to each other, actually agree with each other, understand each other, and show it too. Gabriel leaves Rosita to her thoughts alone in the church, after pleading her not to do it and that they need her. We then see Spencer walking inside of his home, which is still half destroyed from Rick tearing it apart in 704 to find the guns that Spencer had hidden. So the room fades from messy to clean, and so does Spencer as he dresses himself up and actually practices his greetings in front of a mirror, as if he's getting ready for some job interview or getting ready to go out on some date.
Hi. Hi. Hi.
Rosita stops Spencer on his way to go speak with the Saviors, also joking about him going on a hot date. He explains to her that he wants to continue the good momentum that he has going on with them. And after telling Rosita what's going on in his head, he asks her about what's going on in her head about him. This results in Rosita admitting that she was actually giving him attention and using it as a distraction from reality, and she apologizes for it. The conversation between them concludes in Spencer asking Rosita to dinner, which honestly reminds me a lot of a few scenes that go down in the comics with Spencer as well, and in a future video I'm planning on doing, I'll be comparing the comics to the mid-season finale, and I'll include this in greater detail as well. Anyways, we finally get the start of what we've all been waiting for, as Spencer approaches the house Negan's staying at. Although one of the Saviors try keeping Spencer away, Harad I believe, Negan decides to just let him through. That woman is actually the same Savior that previously caught Olivia back in 704 for not properly keeping track of the inventory. Spencer and Negan create small talk on the porch while having a drink that Spencer brought over, but that doesn't last long, as the pool table that Spencer mentions gives Negan an idea. He stands up mentioning how nice of a day it is, and that they should bring out the pool table from the garage across the street, and start a game. The next thing we see is the beginning of the game, as Spencer starts trying to sympathize with Negan.
Could never do this with Rick. He would just be standing there scowling, giving me that annoying side eye he gives me.
That's actually what I came to see you about.
He says how he understands why Negan does what he does, even if he doesn't necessarily agree with how he does it. Now in the comics, this scene was more of a one-on-one between Spencer and Negan, as they just start out on the porch and begin to walk around the block. In the TV show, however, we see all the Saviors circling around them, along with the Alexandrias and even Rosita herself. What's completely ironic here is Spencer actually saying this to Negan is what causes Rick to act this way. Now, I'm not saying that Rick wouldn't eventually want to fight back anyways, but as we soon discuss, the chain of events that occur in this episode are actually what help Rick snap out of it and want to quote-unquote mess things up and fight back.
His ego's out of control. He'll find a way to screw things up, to try and do things his way, to take over. That's what he did with my mom. That's what he'll do again.
Honestly, if you look at this from a realistic perspective, Spencer could have definitely had some sort of in with the Saviors. Maybe if he would have just came on a little less strong, backed off more, and kept his opinions about Rick to himself, he could have became an interesting wild card, possibly even joining them as I mentioned earlier.
I get what you're trying to do here, but you should know that Rick Grimes has a history of not working well with others.
Good thing for you, he's not in charge anymore.
Doesn't matter.
Thankfully, this is the last time Spencer will ever be able to talk shit about Rick Grimes again. Negan does call Spencer's orphan story incredibly sad, but he can tell that Spencer is just using things like that to gain leverage in the conversation. In reality, Negan can see right through Spencer. Always remember that when it comes to it, Negan is a master at reading someone or learning what they're all about. Now, Spencer can actually be related to Father Gabriel, and I'll explain why. If you remember back in Season 5B, Gabriel tried ratting out Rick's group to Deanna, which made fans hate him even more than they already possibly did. Over the past 2 seasons or so, Gabriel has been slowly redeeming himself left and right whenever he's on screen, truly turning himself around and becoming a likable character. Look for a Father Gabriel redemption video in the future, but all that being said, let's think about episode 707 for a moment, along with the conversation between Spencer and Gabriel themselves. And Gabriel realizes where Spencer's head is at and tries talking to him about it. Although he calls Spencer a tremendous shit for talking about Rick the way he did, he tells him that it's not terminal. This means that if Spencer cleans up his act, he can change his ways for the better and redeem himself. As Gabriel says, it's not the thoughts that matter, it's the actions that truly count. Spencer realized all of this and completely understood Father Gabriel, in my opinion. He knew that Gabriel was right, and that's why Spencer ran out into the forest afterwards as he heard a walker, and I believe that he just wanted to take his anger out on one. Negan plays along with Spencer for about as long as he can before calling him out, which I enjoy because it truly brings out the rat in Spencer. So at this point in the episode, Spencer's fate has already been sealed, and Negan is just prolonging the inevitable. He already knows what he's going to do, he's just toying with Spencer, seeing how much he can get out of him. Making inside jokes about Spencer having guts became quite a famous trend amongst the Walking Dead fandom, and now everyone who didn't know why is finally clued in as we see Negan completely gut Spencer after calling him out on his bullshit. This was indeed a satisfying payoff, especially since half of the town is circling them, but I wish we would have gotten more of a reaction out of Spencer himself. It would have been even more horrific to witness Spencer's final moments after he collapses over. It was gruesome enough for sure, but I almost wanted to dwell in the horror for a bit longer, maybe even watching him trying to shove the guts back inside of him before finally dying. Now, I'm unsure as to how quickly it takes to die if you've been gutted like that, but since the focus got immediately shifted to Rosita pulling out her gun, you don't even see Spencer again until he becomes zombified. After Spencer is considered a goner, Negan turns around and starts mocking the situation to the crowd. At first he tells someone to clean up the mess, but then goes into asking if anyone wants to continue the game of pool with him. Negan laughs this off, joking about how he's disappointed and wants to finish the game because he's winning, but not everyone is taking it so lightly. We see Rosita front and center, shaking out of rage and shock of what she just witnessed. Due to emotions overwhelming her, she pulls out the gun that she scavenged in 704 and attempts to shoot Negan right in the face with the bullet that Eugene made her last episode. Now, I'd like to mention how I personally believe that Rosita never intended on doing this, and that Father Gabriel did get through to her. She understood Gabriel and agreed with him, but while getting caught up in the moment of Spencer's death, she is literally standing front and center of the crowd. And I say that because this is literally about the best shot that she could get if she was ever gonna do it. And more on Rosita in just a moment, but let's briefly mention that this is when Aaron and Rick actually get back to Alexandria with their scavenged supplies. Once Aaron gets jumped for absolutely no reason while Rick is forced to watch, they hurry to Rick's house as they hear Rosita's gunshot, which brings us up to speed with the current timeline. So Rosita attempts to shoot Negan, but misses and hits Lucille instead. What an A for effort, Rosita. Good job. And as I said, if she was ever gonna get the perfect opportunity, that would have been it. Negan freaks the hell out due to almost getting shot in the face, but quickly tries regaining his composure. We saw him snap like this when Daryl punched him in the face during the Season 7 premiere as well, but he quickly calms himself down there too. It's understandable having a temper, but goddamn does Negan have a temper when he is defied. Just listening to the way that he yells authority throughout the sanctuary alone is enough to recognize it. The thing is though, no matter what, Negan has to regain his composure because he can't break his persona. Under all the speeches, joking, and swearing, there is a real guy in there, but just as all people playing personas, he has to make sure that he plays the role to his fullest advantage. So he picks up the bullet shell just like Rosita once did in 704, I believe, and asks who made it. Negan realizes that the bullet was homemade and wants to know who the heck has such a valuable skill like that. Rosita obviously doesn't understand that when people don't care about sacrificing their own lives, instead of Negan just doing what they want and killing them, he kills someone else and keeps you alive. He did it to Daryl, and he does it to Rosita by telling Herat to kill someone. Herat is completely compliant, and immediately turns around with her mind already made up, shooting Olivia right in the face.
Barat, kill somebody.
No, it was me! No!
At first, it almost looked like Carl was about to get shot, but as we see, that isn't the case since Olivia drops to the floor. This was completely random, as I assume it shocked everyone. Negan says later that he wouldn't have personally chosen Olivia to be the one to go, but he just shrugs it off, saying that Herat didn't trust her. Two things I'd like to mention about the crowd witnessing all this. First off, when was the last time we've actually seen Tobin? I'm pretty sure we might have seen him in the church during 704, like when Rick was giving the speech about the guns, but I completely forgot he existed. Second off, it's horribly hilarious how on Tara's first encounter with Negan, he kills 2 people in front of her as well. As Eric takes Aaron from Rick, he finally meets Negan and gets the rundown from him. Now, I believe that Negan summed up just about everything in the most efficient way possible, along with some comedy in the lines of course. After Negan finishes his explanation, catching Rick up to speed, all he can say as response is to tell Negan to leave. Now, out of this entire situation, a lot of the dialogue is directly ripped right out of the comics. So once again, look forward to the comparison video next as I go through line by line, because I honestly think it's really entertaining to look at how they've ripped certain lines out of the comics, along with improving them when necessary. It was a huge moment for Eugene to honestly come forward and openly admit that he was the one to make the bullet. For so long, he was hiding behind others, using people to keep him alive and protect him. It's truly a big decision for him to tell the truth, even though he knows that there's a chance he'll be shot just like Olivia was, or even punished like Daryl. Right after Eugene admits to being the culprit that made the bullet, Negan and the Saviors leave as they take Eugene with them. Oh, and Rosita crying out begging them to stop just honestly makes me roll my eyes. I'm sorry, but obviously something like that would have happened. Eugene told her not to. Father Gabriel told her not to. She was shown before that other innocent people can be punished for her actions, yet she still does it, and then acts surprised after? Look, I honestly love Rosita as a whole, and I get that her judgment was completely clouded by emotions, especially in that moment. Like, Spencer practically just asked her out, and then she watches him get gutted in the streets. But regardless, she shouldn't have done any of it in the first place. To conclude this scene, I wanted to talk about the way Rick was left after this altercation, and how it affected him. First off, I want to mention how Rick being left with Olivia and Spencer while the Saviors walk away resembles one of the final scenes in episode 701, when the same thing pretty much happens. In this episode, even the Alexandrians leave him afterwards to clean up as he takes out zombie Spencer. Although he hated Spencer, it does suck horribly losing him, as he was the final member of the Monroe family, and in a way, I bet he feels like he let down Deanna. Just remember back on how hard Rick fought in episode 704 to scavenge Spencer's guns in order to protect Olivia's life. They threatened to kill her, so he rallies up the entire town to save her ass, and she ends up getting executed as punishment for someone else's actions anyways. Rick has done everything he can to save his people. He does his best trying to convince everyone to fall in line, along with organize everyone to provide for Negan and keep him happy. But when he realizes that his people are still dying one way or another, and that it won't work, he feels completely lost and defeated once more. But hopefully this is for the last time. He was out for days scavenging some crazy supplies, risking his life, and does his job. He gets back home, just to have his friend get jumped for no reason, along with 2 deaths due to 2 failed assassination missions and someone trying to betray Rick himself. He can't control his people, and he now understands why, so let's jump right into that. Later on, once Michonne gets back to Alexandria like we said earlier, she meets Rick in that cell that Morgan actually built during Season 6. Crazy foreshadowing in this, you have no idea if you don't read the comics. Oh my god. But anyways, they give each other a hug and talk out the events of the episode. Michonne explains that she doesn't want to do things on her own, and that she wants to do things alongside Rick. Of course, they want to be supportive and they want to do things together. She doesn't want to hide things from him, especially when it comes to plotting things against Negan. This entire scene is essentially Michonne helping Rick break out of his own cage that he's been trapped in the entire half season. The literal cage that he's in, while Michonne is laying out the realization of their current lives, wraps it all up in a nice bow as it represents that cage that Rick is fighting to break out of. Having Rick watch Glenn and Abraham get their heads smashed in really broke him as a character, and it completely changed his perspective all around. Michonne, on the other hand, honestly hasn't changed one bit, as her perspective has always stayed the same since Season 3, and it truly inspired Rick to see that in that moment. The scene concludes with an amazing Michonne kiss, as Rick admits that he understands where she's coming from now, and he's finally starting to see things from another light. I'm so glad that Michonne is staying strong in this moment, as it was honestly very touching to see Michonne's hint of joy as she smiles while tearing up over the fact that she's finally gotten through to Rick. I truly believe that Michonne will last forever. They have been through everything imaginable together, as Michonne says, and they will last until a new beginning together. Although some fans have had their doubts as to how they will react to each other this season, they prove to be nothing but supportive of each other. Finally, we see Maggie paying respect to Glenn's grave once more as she climbs the wall again, except this time she's greeted by a much familiar group of faces opposed to Gregory. Rick and group meet Maggie, Sasha, and Enid at the gates of the hilltop as we get another happy, cheerful moment, showing the many small reunions between the characters as the final scene of the episode. And honestly, thank God, because this is something that we all really needed. Daryl also pops out from around the corner to Rick's surprise. More joy on everyone's face ensues as Rick, Tara, and everyone else greets Daryl, who also gives Rick back his classic Python. Rick seems extremely confused, but obviously isn't complaining as we watch him holster it the way we've always seen him do. Enid smiles at Carl, happy to see that he isn't dead. I suppose that Enid can also lift that weight of keeping him a secret off her shoulders. Rosita and Sasha also get a glance at each other, as any tension between them seems to be broken, since Rosita nods at her, signifying that they are family and need to be united. One conversation that I really wish we could have saw go down was Daryl and Maggie. Now, I personally believe that Maggie doesn't hate Daryl, right? Like, she's gonna forgive him for technically being the reason why Glenn died, but Daryl is so hung over the fact that he's the reason that Glenn died. He cannot forgive himself, and so Daryl, I feel, is almost scared of Maggie because he's scared of what she thinks of him. Now, I get how there was the whole music montage and, you know, there wasn't really any dialogue, and also they kind of hid Daryl until he came around the corner with Jesus. They wanted that to be like a whole reveal, so I get why they didn't have a previous conversation with him and Maggie. Maybe we'll see something in Season 7B. I honestly hope so, because I really want to get some sort of closure for this. Anyways, I believe that this ending to the episode perfectly completes the half season, bringing Season 7A to a proper close. I was very satisfied with this half season, and honestly looking back on it now, it has definitely become one of my favorites. In the future, I plan on making more videos on Season 7A, giving my full opinions and reflections of it, along with everything left to come in the second half of Season 7 next year. I can say that I'm honestly satisfied as a fan, especially after the last 2 episodes. They were both extended to proper amounts, 707 being 70 minutes and 708 being 90 minutes, well, with commercial that is. I enjoy it when AMC and The Walking Dead decide to extend certain episodes now, depending on how much story there is to tell. I don't care if they even have episodes with odd end times, as long as they could just have it roll into Talking Dead anyways. We're seeing a lot more extended episodes lately, and I'm definitely glad. Who doesn't want more Walking Dead every week, especially if it helps flush out the story better? What did you guys think of the mid-season finale? I've said about all I can say for this episode in one day, and I appreciate you all for listening. Feel free to drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed anything I've said today, along with your opinions and theories down below in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.